Order submitted. Order submitted. Order submitted.
There's an
Order
inherent
submitted.
attraction to light and being human. And I think on a very deep psychological level, light is this way in which we experience the energy surrounding us in a very personal manner. My name is Matt Dilling. I'm the founder of Light Bright Neon Studio, and we manufacture, produce, and restore neon works of art and design. Origins of the creative content of a lot of the work at Light Bright comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes people come with a napkin sketch, some people come with an Adobe Illustrator file, and we have a whole design team who then we kind of work together to help create layouts of what it might look like. Scale it up and create a paper template using a pen plotter. And that paper template actually becomes our guide for what we're going to bend the neon to. We take from the office into the glass shop. We pick out the right size tubing with the right color for the right size project. From there, we heat up the glass tubing. The torches heat the glass well in excess of 1,000 degrees in order for it to get into its molten state. We heat up and bend the glass tubing to match the template. One of our chandeliers has over 100 different bends in it. So each one of those bends has to be marked for a heated up bend. We also have to allow the glass to cool between the bends so that the next area can be worked on and heated up in its own unique fashion. It turns into spaghetti, and then we have to make sure that that spaghetti lines back up and cools to the template. We use a blow hose to connect our mouth to the tube, create a volume that's closed, and we can control the pressure in there with our mouth. There's just a variety of challenges that come up inherently in working with glass. Glass can crack due to stress, and sometimes you'll just have a batch that all it wants to do when it gets near a torch is crack. After we've bent various components, we have to go in using the crossfire or the hand torch and actually weld all of those pieces together. The last step on that is then to weld on electrodes onto either end. Each one of those steps is very, very specific. I draw inspiration from so many different experiences. It's hard to come up with one thing that's particular, but one of the ways that I really am able to connect with the creative is to float. Floating is a similar experience to meditation, to psychedelics. Going into a blackened room and laying out in a body of water and salt that's heated to your body temperature, and it allows for all sort of external stimulation to fall away. And your internal world really begins to bubble up and manifest. You really get to experience a different relationship to your mind. think I work with neon because I can't not work with it. It's so challenging and so rewarding. And those things are so intertwined that there's no way of separating it out. I learn so much and continue to learn so much by working with it. I find so much inspiration in working with it, and I just continue to experience new and different things through the medium. It's that close to me at this point. Once the neon tube is completed, we have to hook it up to our manifold for bombarding. The manifold is opened, a vacuum is drawn. We check the tube for leaks with our Tesla coil. We close the tube back off and we heat it up using a very large and powerful transformer. As the tube is heated up, it releases anything that's not inert inside the tube and we evacuate that out. We introduce the gas into it and we seal the tube off, sealing into that tube whatever gas we introduced into it. I think my favorite part of making a neon light is when I see it lit up for the first time. Different gases, when electrified, emit different wavelengths of light. Neon gas is this very bright orange, fiery red color. Argon gas creates a very intense blue, but that light output that is produced can then be expressed in a different wavelength by coating the inside of the tubes with a phosphor coating that takes that one wavelength of light and emits at different wavelengths. We bring it over to the aging table where we hook it up to an age-in transformer and allow it to settle, age the gas in that we've introduced to it. There's always a stray particle of something left inside the tube. But that time that the oxide coating can act to scrub whatever is left inside the tube while things are getting settled into place. Once the tubes are aged in, we move on to our process of assembling two halves of the fixture together in a jig, gluing up the center of the fixture to its spindle. Once the adhesive dried, we would connect the wires from the fixture together into a transformer, and we turn on power and it lights up. Part of what we love about what we do here is that we try and put out into the world the kind of things that we'd like to see. I still am surprised when it lights up. I'm still excited when I get to see it illuminated. There's an ineffable quality to it. To me, it is this insight into the inner workings of the universe. It literally is. It's a way of looking at what is surrounding us in the cosmos in a new light.
It's a bit like an addiction. You've got to make something, you have to do something. It's borderline obsession. And every bike we build is my favourite bike at the time, and as soon as it's done, I want to build another one. Sven Cycles is something I've been thinking about ever since I started cycling in my late teens. We want bikes that ultimately you'll really enjoy riding. There's never a bike that's the same. There's always a slight change. And as we build them individually as well, they have the marks of a bike that's built by hand. Most people I know cycle have an idea of their dream bicycle. And it may be an evolving idea you've had in your head. And we've worked with a lot of people that have come to us with sketches and scrapbooks. It's really, really nice to build something that's just one-off and unique. I think a lot of people see a bicycle as two wheels and a frame in the middle. There are a lot of subtle changes and nuances in design which can change the riding characteristics quite dramatically. I'm a really big fan of modernist architecture, and the simplicity of a modernist building is really hard to achieve. And with some of our bikes, they may look very simple, but I think people should not underestimate the time and effort that goes into designing a product. Tubing is key to a bike's feel and ride. Reynolds tubing has been in my life ever since I can remember. Growing up, I could never afford a frame manufactured with their tubing. We can now put a badge on our bike saying manufactured at Reynolds, which is a sort of thing as a kid I just wouldn't have believed was going to happen. Every part of the bike has a specific tube. It's not universal. The first thing we do is get the tubes out, check they're correct, check the wall thicknesses, sand the edges, make sure it's all really clean, because if it's not clean, the tubes won't join together correctly. We build in steel because I still believe it's one of the best materials to use. It's been used in bikes since the late 1800s, and they're still using it now for a very good reason. It's the flexibility that we can replace the tube, repaint the bike, and you wouldn't know it's damaged. I just like working with it. It's very sculptural. This isn't sort of aerospace precision engineering.
Order cancelled.
It's a steel rule and a marker. So when we're cutting the tubes, it's within a mil or two. But what we're trying to do is take the best from bicycle building in the past and add a little bit of modern flair to it. There's various techniques for building bicycles. We do a thing called fillet brazing, where you connect a pipe together. We use a bronze rod and a flame. We heat the tubes up to the same temperature and we fill the joint with bronze. And it gives a very, very sort of fluid, lovely, sort of quite sculptural feel. You've got to practice, you've got to be able to judge material temperatures, you've got to just look at it and you just get a feel for it. It's the stage where your tubes start to look a bit like a bicycle. My father's a jeweller. He'd make sort of very pretty things, which are lovely, but for me, they don't really have any function. What I love about bicycles, you can start on a Monday with a box of tubes, and you can be riding it by the weekend, and it can last you for the rest of your life. Outside of the frame and forks, the other most important part is the wheels and tyres. When you build the wheels, you have to lace them, so there's little holes going all the way around the rim. You poke the spoke through. We do build all our wheels by hand here because a machine can't get 30 years worth of wheel building experience. Colour is very, very personal. With any of our bikes, you can have them painted whatever colour you want. We've matched one to a teapot, so we can get that scanned and we can match that, or someone's favourite item of clothing. I like to let the bike sit for 4 or 5 days minimum, just so the paint can have time to cure a little bit, and then we assemble it. We get out all the new components, and it's a case of putting them together. Some bikes you can assemble in 3 hours, some will take 3 days. And we've built bikes that cost in the £10,000 plus mark. Some people, they're saving up and this is their bike and they're going to own it for the rest of their lives, so we just want to make sure they get the right thing. I think the bike for me was the first time I had some freedom, so as soon as I had one I was off. A lot of people still get that thrill as when they were a kid blasting down a hill, wind going through their hair. It's fun. Everyone has their favourite jacket or something that just makes them feel good. If you've got a bike that fits well, you actually feel part of it. Building bicycles as a creative outlet is fantastic. It's not something you do because you're going to get a big paycheck at the end of the day. You do it something you have a passion for it.
Order submitted.
If you ever saw a wooden surfboard, it was probably hanging in somebody's house or underneath the deck. But kind of in the last 10 or 15 years, wood has made a big comeback. They surf wonderfully. It's beautiful and it feels great to be on one of them. I always had a love for wood and kind of passionate about things that went in the water. I've kind of been around wooden boats most of my life. There's just so much character. The way they're built, the stories that come with them, a lot of that has translated over to why we build surfboards the way we do. When we first started thinking about building surfboards, wood was the natural material we chose. They have a very high strength to weight ratio. Wooden surfboards have the longest history of use in the surf world than any other material. People have been surfing wooden surfboards since kind of the first documented history of people riding waves. The board starts in CAD, where we take a 3D model, break down the shape, and kind of create frames and templates and all the inner parts of the board that we get cut on a CNC machine. We take those frames and we just pop them out, assemble the frame into kind of a skeleton. We go out to our lumber shed, pick a bunch of cedar, and bring them into our mill shop, put glue along the edges, clamp it all together into a panel. Everything's book matched. You have symmetry in the colors and texture of the wood. Cut your outline. Take our assembled frame, gently put it down right on top of the plank. Once that foundation is started, you're basically building up the three-dimensional shape, the outside part of the board, using lots of strips that kind of interlock and fit together. Every piece of wood is going to be different, and it's all going to react differently. There are frustrations with it, but I think that's one of the things that keeps it challenging. You learn to read the kind of what the grain lines are doing and what the color of the wood is telling you. Once those rails are cleaned up, we put our top planks on. It's a little bit like putting a lid on a box. It's like, this is it. Whatever's inside that board is staying inside that board. And by tensioning some rope, you can clamp the two together. It's like a time capsule. What makes our boards unique are they are built right here in York. They're built using material that grows right here in the state of Maine. They're built 100% by hand by local craftspeople and surfers. There's a lot of time that goes into these boards, between 40 and 60 hours start to finish. We wanted to build surfboards that were as hollow as they could be, but still be strong enough to work well. Too light and they don't surf well, but too heavy and they don't surf well. So there's a balance point there, and that's where we try to be. Taking the board off the rocker table once the top has gone on, that is by far one of my top favorite parts. It's just you and a shaping stand, a board, and a hand plane. Everything else is out of your view. It's simple, it's pleasurable, it's quiet. You can be with your thoughts and you can just kind of be present. There's something about taking a nice sharp edge tool to a beautiful piece of wood and feeling the curls coming off and knowing that every pass that you're making, you're kind of getting it closer and closer to what you have in mind. Once we've shaped it down and the board's looking like it's supposed to look like, time for it to go into the glassing room.
Order canceled.
4-ounce fiberglass, laying it over the board, draping it over the edges, cutting it, applying epoxy, and on the board. Once both sides are lamb coated, it's time to put in the hardware. Drill and router and install the fin box. And on the other side, we drill and put in the leash plug and a vent. There's a lot of air just